Many students struggle with shading because they're missing a clear roadmap, and that's exactly what I'll give you in this video. Today, I'll walk you through the 4 stages of shading. We'll cover the purpose of each stage, what to focus on at each stage so you always know what to do next and don't miss essential steps, and the correct order of the stages, because the order in which you do things is actually a key to realistic results. All of this should bring clarity to your shading process and help your drawings gain depth, dimension, realism, and that polished, professional finish. We'll use this flower drawing as an example, and I have a whole course where you can draw it with me step by step inside my Drawing Decoded membership. To make this even easier for you, I've put together a free downloadable guide to these 4 stages of shading. You'll find the link in the description box below. So let's get started simplifying the shading process so that you can experience the thrill of seeing your drawing transform from 2D to 3D. Hi, I'm Marina, a professional visual artist, former college professor of visual art, and founder of thedrawingsource.com. I help students just like you transform your drawing skills and develop your creative voice so you can make realistic drawings that are uniquely your own. Shading this flower can be divided into 4 stages: flat values, big form modeling, small form modeling, and smoothing and finishing. The flat value stage. In this first stage, we have 3 main goals. The first is to simplify the values of our subject into 3 groups: light, halftone, and dark. This is called establishing the value structure. By simplifying what we see into 3 flat, uniform tones, we avoid feeling overwhelmed by the infinite values in front of us. It also helps us establish correct value relationships from the beginning of the shading process. Mimicking the value relationships on our subject is a key to achieving a realistic drawing. Finally, the contrast between the light, halftone, and dark shapes makes it easier to compare the shapes on our drawing to those on our subject. Our shapes should be as specific as possible by this stage. If they look inaccurate, this is the time to correct them, because no amount of shading will fix incorrect proportions. Our second goal is to cover the white paper where it's not needed. Only leave the paper white where you need its light value. Why? Because our perception of a value is affected by what surrounds it. A value might look like a value 5 when surrounded by white, but when surrounded by the darker values in the scene, it looks like a value 3. Our last goal in the flat value stage is to establish the value extremes. Where are the lightest values? Where are the darkest values? In this example, the darkest value is the background, and the lightest values are where we left the paper white. By the end of this stage, you should have a 2-dimensional flat image with specific and accurate shapes, and a value structure that correctly shows the relationships between the light, halftone, and dark values in the image. Now, if you're wondering, how do I decide which categories the halftones fall into? How do I simplify values correctly and build effective value structures that make my drawing look convincingly realistic? I teach all of this step by step inside my Drawing Decoded membership. It's where I guide students through a clear curriculum of courses, including Introduction to Smooth Shading and Realistic Drawing 101, which is where this video and flower drawing tutorial come from. If you've been guessing or struggling with this on your own, you don't have to. I'll walk you through every step of this essential knowledge and the ways of seeing and technical skills you need to shade beautifully and realistically. Our next stage is the big form modeling stage. Here we shift our thinking from flat 2-dimensional shapes to round 3-dimensional forms. Our goal in this stage is to create a sense of volume in the largest forms of the flower, such as the far left petal and the 2 front petals. We can do this by softening the edges between the shadow shapes and the light shapes to create smooth gradations. This can also be called turning the form or modeling the big forms. At this point, the values in the flower look somewhat generalized, but it's starting to look three-dimensional because of the gradations and variations in edge quality. Besides turning the form, I've also darkened the back petals. Look what a difference that made. Simply darkening the petals, making them closer in value to the background, pushes them back in space and makes them look like they're farther away from us. Notice that I have not yet started working on the lightest areas of the flower. The small form modeling stage. Now that the big forms have a sense of volume, we can turn our attention to the smaller forms. These include both the separate small forms, like the ones in the center of the flower, and the smaller forms embedded in the larger ones. For example, this petal is made up of several smaller interlocking forms. The top two are spherical and can be rendered similarly to how you would shade something round. They're both lighter at the top right and gradually darken towards the other side. In this stage, we also want to start creating a focal point, an area of focus that attracts the eye of the viewer. My focal point here will be the front left petal, so I start making its edge sharper. Here I've also started addressing the lightest areas of the flower and creating subtle gradations within them to create a sense of volume. Smoothing and finishing. The last stage of shading is all about refining your drawing. You'll focus on smoothing out your tones to refine the sense of realism, and you'll add the most nuanced, subtle value shifts. For example, in the far left petal, look how many modulations in value there are. Starting with the far side, this value darkens slightly. Then it transitions to a slightly lighter tone before darkening again. Then there's a sharper edge where the petal curves up. This tiny sliver is dark enough to cause the light value in front of it to stand out, but it's dark enough to still be perceived as being in shadow. My focal point in this finished drawing is clear. The front left petal has the sharpest edges and the highest contrast, both of which attract the eye. There are many other qualities of edges throughout the drawing, adding depth and interest, and helping to move the viewer's eye around the picture. In this stage, you can also create a smoother, more realistic effect by filling in the gaps between values. You can learn how to do that in my Intro to Smooth Shading course in the Drawing Decoded membership. To what extent you refine your drawing is completely up to you. It depends on three main factors. Taste. Whether aesthetically you like a smooth finish where you can barely see the pencil marks, or a grainier look. Some artists prefer to leave evidence of their hand by leaving visible pencil marks. One way is not better than the other, it's simply a matter of personal preference. Personally, I like for my drawings to look very smooth from afar, but reveal themselves to be drawings with visible pencil strokes up close. Skill. The sensitivity of your hand, the more comfortable you are with your drawing tools and shading technique, the further you'll be able to refine your drawing. And patience. This last 10% of the shading process can be the most time-consuming, so it depends on how much you enjoy it and how much time you want to spend on it. This is one of the ways, not the only way, to organize the shading process. When you're learning, having clear, distinct stages with focused priorities helps ensure that you don't skip any essential steps needed for believable realism. As you gain experience, you'll naturally start to combine stages. They won't have to feel as separate. However, if you're not yet achieving the realistic effect you want, it likely means that you're skipping steps or missing key foundational elements. I would love to help you build shading skills that you can feel confident in, so that you can enjoy the shading process and create realistic dimensional drawings that you're proud of. I recommend starting with Foundations of Drawing Technique, followed by Intro to Smooth Shading, and then shade this flower with me step by step. You can access all of these courses in Drawing Decoded. The link is in the description below. Don't forget to download your free guide to the 4 stages of shading. I've laid out the priorities so that you can refer back to them anytime. And when you're ready, watch this video on 3 keys to shading light values to keep developing your shading skills. See you there.